In this tutorial, we are gonna cover how local storage can be used to like store some small data and like work as a database. So local storage can hold up to like 10 BBs of data, but so we are going to utilize that and make a small app out of that. So I have come across this like small app where we can add in feedback, edit this feedback, delete feedback. So let's test it. I'm going to click on this add feedback, and so I'm going to add in my name. So let's give it a nice title, nice app, and some detail, and let's click on add feedback. So here it is added. Okay, so I'm gonna like change its title to my full name. Okay, so let's click on edit. We can go here and I can change the other details as well, but I'm gonna for now just changing the name. Click on the add feedback, and you see we got our name changed, and we can delete this as well. So here are the like some CRUD operations, like CRUD, what you do with the database, like create, read, update, delete. So we did all of those operations with our local storage. So we're gonna now like jump into it and see how this works with a combination of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and local storage. That is our web API. Let's get into it. So for the design, so for the design, I actually went to the front end mentor where they have like a really good designs. And if I like search for, let me directly search for, so this website is really awesome. So if you want to like try in some challenges or get the ideas, so you can really get in the design and then try to build that design with the code. So this website is really helpful in building your skills up. So I'm gonna like I picked up the feedback app, front end mentor. Okay, here it is. So I picked up like this UI design and tried to make it similar to this. Okay, so let's jump into it and try to build it. I'm gonna go to my VS Code and give it a title, some title feedback app, and then we have a container where all of our code will rely. So I'm gonna give it a some header, modal header. So because why did I give it the double underscore? So this is actually a CSS coding technique that I'm using, which is called BEM. If you can go to BEM, search for BEM. So this is block element modifier. Is a methodology that helps you create reusable elements. So what happens is like block. So you always so it's a naming methodology where you in the first you give it double underscore, and then you have an element name like it's a header, and then whatever the modifying thing is like you give that with the, and then whatever the like modifying thing is you give that like if it's a title you give as this model header title, or you can like use this as well, model header title. So it's totally up to you, model header title like that as well, but it's up to you. So this is like a BEM technique. Okay, I'm gonna like stick with a model header, and I'm gonna give it a ID as well, and give it a ID of model header as well. And then inside of that we have two things actually. If we go to our design, where is actually our design went? Okay, so it's a design. So on the left side we will like show the like total feedbacks on, and on the right side we will show add feedback button. Okay, so let's undo is left header, and in the left header we will have h3 then we will have a span element. Why we are adding span element? Because we need to change this a number. Like for example, now I'm giving it 26, but we need to change this number, so I'm gonna give it id, so we can really change that with our JavaScript. And 26 feedbacks, and then we will have actually the right header. And on the right header we know that we have a button, a simple button, and then we will give this button with a class button feedback button, and with the id of add feedback button. Okay, so we added a button with the class and id, and we're gonna name it as plus add feedback. So if we go to our browser, so it is now something similar to this. That's it for our header. We can move to our now the main content. So we can do is feedback list, with the id of feedback list. Okay, and then we can give it a so then inside of that we will have some items, and we're gonna give it feedback item, and we're gonna give it some actually animation as well. Okay, so for that I'm gonna give it a class of item animation, and then we will have actual feedback details. And then the first thing we need is to show the name. Okay, so we will give it h4 dot feedback name and feedback name. Okay, I'm gonna like now give it a name of like a random name, like my name, hard code this, and then we will change this like every time with our JavaScript. Okay, the next thing we want to do is like the title, whatever the title is. Okay, so feedback title, and this is feedback title, and then we need is feedback title. Okay, so I'm gonna give it a nice app, and then we will have a p tag. Text, and that's it. I found this app really helpful. If we go to our browser, we see that the content is looking something like this. We'll style this when we will move to our CSS section, but let's finish our the HTML part first. Okay, then we need is actually the two buttons. The first is gonna be added, and the second is gonna be added buttons. So this button would be have a class of feedback button, and I'm gonna give it a edit button, and inside that it would go in edit, and then another, let me just copy paste this, change it to delete, change it to delete. All right, that's all right. So we have two buttons, and the final thing is like when we like click on this, we need a like pop-up thing like a modal, right? So let's add in that modal as well, and that modal should be inside of the container but outside of the main body. So we will say that, let's add in a comment over here as well, adding a modal to feedback, adding a modal to add feedback. Let's add in a comment, this should be a comment, dot modal, and give the ID of add feedback modal, and we'll give it a modal content. And on the left side we will have, then we will have another div with some class modal header left, we will give it a h1 add feedback, and then we can move to our next div, which is body, modal body. Here we will have actually the form with 3 inputs, okay, and we will say that form with the ID of add feedback form with the class of form, and this form won't go anywhere, so I'm going to remove this action. And then inside of that we will need 3 inputs, okay, so we will make them a group, class of form group, and then inside of that we need actually 2 things. One is the label and one is actually its input. For first is gonna be name is equal to name, ID is equal to name as well, and class of form input, so we can really style this input as well. All right, let's test it. Okay, so this is like this, and now we need actually 2 more inputs. So I'm gonna like just copy paste this 2 more times, and this should be actually the feedback title. And one more thing is actually this is an text area, so this should be text and class of form input. All right, so our form is just looking like this, and now we need a button, 2 buttons, like one is add button and one is cancel button. Okay, so let's add those buttons. After these and that should go over here after the modal body, and they should be named as modal inside of the modal footer. They should be inside of the modal footer, and we can name this button to be first button dot modal button. And one more thing is we want to give it a class of feedback button as well, that we are gonna style to this button, so it will automatically get that styling. Okay, feedback button with the ID of add button. And then we need to copy paste this one more time for the cancel. So this is modal button cancel, and I think that's it for our HTML. And now we need to style this. So let's create in two more files. One is gonna be our style.css and one is gonna be our script file. Okay, and let's link these files over here. Script file is gonna be over here, and CSS file is gonna be over here. All right, and let's add in some. And the first thing that we are gonna use is the font family, which is gonna be Jost, which we are gonna import from the Google Fonts. Okay, so I'm gonna go to Google Fonts, fonts. So we are gonna use this font family. Okay, Jost, and selecting the regular one, the bold one, and one is light. Okay, and then we're gonna click on this import and copy this line of code and do what is simply add in one line of code over here. Okay, so this font family is now ready to be used in our project. Okay, and the second thing is we can like also copy this family Jost, and then we can give it to our body, paste that. Okay, let's add in something like a margin to be 0 to remove the margin from all the elements, and padding is gonna be 0, and box sizing to be border box. Okay, and then we're gonna give it the background color. So some formal properties, some usual properties. Okay, line height is gonna be 1.5, and display to be flex, align items to be center, justify content to be center. That will make the content to be in center. Okay, and min height to be 100 viewable height. That's it. If we can see it now, so you see our content is now in the center of the screen. All right, and now we need to do is first of all give the container a width of 600 pixels, and so our container is now taking 600 pixels of width. This should not be actually modal header, but it should be feedback header. Okay, and this should be feedback header. Okay, so let's style this feedback header. So because we want these to be side by side, so we will give them what modal feedback header and give them display to be flex. So they would now be side by side, and to get them in space in between, so we will say justify content to be space in between and line items to be center. So now they are there is a space equal space, and now we can really do some color stuff, and we can say background to be actually just background to be RGB 55,63 and therefore and none. So we can really see more about this background over here. So background image to be none. Okay, so we are adding a background position to be 0%. 0% means, so if we go over here, so we are adding some these properties over here. So we're gonna say background image to be none and background position to be 0% and 0%. So you can really play around this and see what it does and see. So if you give it 0%, 0%, that means it would be on the top left. Okay, 0%, 0%. Okay, so you can really play around and giving it some properties and background attachment to be scroll. So the background would be scrollable. If you see, if you give a scroll and have a scroll down, and you can see it scrolls down to be like different properties. So I'm gonna give this background none, background image to be none. It is gonna be repeat background repeat to be repeat. Okay, and then it's gonna be scroll, and it's gonna be on the top left 0%, 0%. And to add in the border radius, so to add in a curve, we will say border radius and some padding in between. So add in a spacing, so we will say padding. Okay, border radius 10 pixels and padding to be 20 pixels. Okay, and this is what it looks like. And now we need to style the heading and the button. So we can say h3 to be font size to be 18 pixels, line height to be 26 pixels, color is gonna be white, font weight to be 700 to make it a little bold, and the letter spacing is gonna be minus 0.25 pixels, so they would be really close to each other. Okay, so now our feedback is looking better, and now we need to really style our feedback button. I'm gonna say feedback button outline to be none, to remove its outline, display to be inline, give its padding from inner, from top and bottom 12 pixels, from left and right 24 pixels, border radius to add in a curve around the button, we will say border radius 10 pixels, and then transition to add in the really smoothness, all 0.3 second is 0 second. So you see when I hover on it, there is a transition of 0.3 seconds. Okay, We added a border radius, padding from inner side, and now we need to add in some more properties to make it really a cool button. Font weight to be bold. Font weight is actually gonna be 600, and the font size to be 14 pixels. Line height to be 20 pixels. Color is gonna be RGB 242, 244, 254, and when I hover on this, the cursor should change to pointer, and border is gonna be medium to none. And the last thing we need is the background, which is gonna be something similar to this, but we're gonna just change the RGB values. Okay, and we're gonna say for this 173, 31 to 34. So now our feedback button is designed and it's looking very cool, I think, in my opinion. And now it's time to style this header section. Okay, let's do that quickly. And but before styling the header, we need to do is when we hover on the button, we need to do is we need to change its background color a little. Okay, and we're gonna say 199 to 46, and transform as well, a little transform from x-axis. We're gonna translate 0 rem, and from y we're gonna translate that to a little minus 0.125 rem. So if I now hover on it, you see it from x-axis it doesn't do, but on the y-axis it moves a little up. Okay, so that is a nice color animation on hover. And now we can really design our actually the feedback item, that is the main content. Okay, so we can say feedback underscore item, and background is gonna be, just copy this again, I'm gonna just change in the inner values 255, 255 and 255. Okay, and border radius to be 10 pixels. To add in the curve, add in the spacing from the inner, we're gonna say 28 pixels, and from top and left, from top and bottom 28 pixels, and from left and right it's gonna be 32 pixels. Then display of flags to like get them side by side, because our buttons are on the right side and the content is on the left side. You see, now we need to add in some spacing in between. Okay, so we can say justify content to be space in between, and align items to be center. And now we can add in a little transition to it also. All 0.3 sec is 0 sec, and margin from top and bottom should be 20 pixels, and from left and right 0 pixels. And now you see it is well designed app. And if I refresh this, you see there is no animation, and we need to add in a little animation to this also when the page reloads. Okay, so to add in the animation, we already added a class to it, like feed item animation. We're gonna target that now. And to make an animation, we can say animation and animation over here. So this should tell that it's an animation, and we can name it like anything, like slider and anything like you want. Okay, so I'm gonna like because I'm making a slide up animation, so I'm gonna name it as slide up. So how much this animation should take? It should take 0.3 second. Okay, so this is the duration, and how it should act? It should act as ease in out. Okay, so let's actually for 0.3 second is ease in out, but let's actually target it out for like 0.3 second. Let's move it from bottom to up. Okay, so that actually happens in the like CSS is with the keyframes. Okay, so we can like press an enter, and the identifier is like whatever you specify over here, you need to give that over here. Okay, so because we give that slide up over there, so we're gonna say slide up, and as 0%, like initially at first point, we're gonna say opacity to be 0, and transform where is transform translate y to be 100%, like from like it would like come over here at initially, and then it would come to its original position when it comes to like 100%. That makes sense. And then like at like opacity is also like 0, like when it's over here, like it's not visible, and then like becomes a little visible over here, and then visible over here. Then when it comes over here, it becomes fully visible. Okay, opacity 1, and then transform back to translate y 0 first. So if I now refresh this, you see it comes from bottom, like its opacity is 0, like it like slowly becomes visible. So it's a nice animation. And let's design our final part, which is model. And this model is not even gonna be like visible initially. It's gonna visible only when we click on the feedback, but that's gonna be like for our JavaScript when we move to our JavaScript. H1, let's style H1. I'm gonna say H1 font weight to be 700, font size 24 pixels, line height to be 35 pixels, a letter spacing minus 0.3333 pixels, and color is gonna be some RGB, and I'm gonna pass in 58 comma 67 116. If you're wondering like how I know these values, so they are from like I already showed you that these are the colors that are specified over here, so I'm just reusing from these designs. Okay, color is gonna be this, and then we need is padding from bottom 26 pixels. So from heading there would be a spacing from bottom to be at 26 pixels, and from top it should be 16 pixels. Alright, if we now check in our heading 1, so it is looking much better, and now we need to actually design these. So let's move to this section. I'm gonna like first target the our input. Okay, input, and then we're gonna say width to be 100%, so it's gonna take in 100% of the width that's available to it. Padding from top and bottom to be 13 pixels, from left and right 24 pixels, and font weight to be 400, and then font size to be 15 pixels, line height to be 22 pixels, and color to be RGB 58, this. Okay, and then we need is the background color. Background, for background we're gonna copy this and just change in the RGB values. To add in the curve around the input, we will say 5 pixel, and border is gonna be medium to none. And let's check in, and you see that is over here, but it is contrasting with that. Okay, so it's contrasting with that, so we can give the background or change the background color of this model to something else, so we can really see our input really well. Okay, so for that we need to go to over here. We're going to say model content and say background to be this. Okay, so if we now look at this, and you see now our this content is visible, well, but it is not really very good. Okay, let's fix it. We're gonna say model content to be display flex, and the flex direction to be column, and gap should be 24 pixels, and then border radius to be 10 pixels as well, and then padding of 42 pixels. And now let's see. So we added a spacing, it's from top and bottom and left and right, so our content is moved to inner a little bit and is looking much better than before. And we added a curve around it with a border radius, and there is a gap of 24 pixels. So you see the gap is like this. If we that is really noticeable. And now we need to like design this text area as well. So I'm gonna say text area width of 100%, so it is resizable, no resize to be none, border to be medium none, there shouldn't be any overflow to be auto, so then we need is outline to be none. Let's copy and paste this because our background is same as that. Okay, and then border radius to be 5 pixels, height is gonna be 96 pixels, and padding from inner, like spacing from inner, to be 24 pixels. Font size is gonna be 15 pixels. Line height is gonna be 22 pixels. Color is gonna be whatever the like when you type in, that color should be 140, 146 and 179. And then margin from the bottom, final thing is gonna be 24 pixels. And now you see our text area is looking much better. And what we need is one more thing, these buttons should be aligned to be to the right side, so we can really target these buttons. Model footer. Okay, so we can say display to be flex and align self to be flex end, and they will be aligned to the end. And then we need to add in some spacing in between, so we will say that gap, little gap in between, gap to be 16 pixels of gap in between both element. Okay, so now they are looking much better. And to change in its color, we give this cancel button an extra class, so we need to target that class. Let's say color to be RGB this, and background to be, just copy this and we'll change in the values. And now you can see they are looking much better. But initially the model is not visible. Okay, it is visible only when it is clicked. So we need to do that thing. Let's initially display to be none. So we can really go over here at the top and we can say dot model and display to be none. For now, if you give it a display to be none, this whole thing is gonna be disappeared. Okay, because that whole thing was inside of the model. And now I'm gonna say position of fixed. Position of fixed means like it now more like it's now gets out of the normal flow and is now fixed over here. Okay, so now we need to tell where it should be fixed from. So we can really tell that top from the top, and from the top it should be 20%, and from the left it should be 15%. So it should be from the top, it should be fixed on from the top 20% and it should be fixed from the left 15%. So okay, so it is now fixed over here. But I want something else also, and we can say width is, so its width to be 70% and height to be 100%. Okay, so it is now like this, and now we can say overflow to be scroll. Okay, so we can really scroll if there is scrolling. We can say to like overflow to be auto as well. And we can say height to be 90%. What if we give the height of 90%? Okay, so it is now like this, and now we can like make it display to be none. Okay, so that's it for our CSS, and now we need to work on these things with our JavaScript. That is our JavaScript file. Okay, first things first, let's target all of our elements from the HTML that we need in JavaScript to be like changed or adding the stuff to that. All right, so we're gonna target our feedback header. Document.getElement by, because we are grabbing it with our ID, and then we need is, let's get these feedbacks. All right, and then we need is add feedback button. All right, let me quickly do is console log all of these, so to test if I target them correctly or not. Feedback header. All right, let me go to this, press in Control Shift I and go to console. So I'm getting all of the elements that I targeted perfectly. Okay, so we can really work on these now. And first things first is when I click on add feedback, what happens is it is displayed off and the modal pops up. And so let's do that first. So I'm gonna do is add feedback button dot add event listener on click. So when I click on this, what happens is we're gonna add that functionality over here. So this is gonna be inside of this function. So we're gonna write that function over here and we're gonna say modal. So let's target our modal first. Because we didn't target our modal, let modal is equal to this add feedback modal. Okay, document dot get element by id. Okay, so we're gonna say modal dot style dot display to be block. Okay, so we can really see that because initially it is display to be none. Okay, so then we're gonna say modal header. Actually let's test this functionality and then we will move on. You see, we get this functionality. And now because that thing modal header and whatever that is, it this content is showing on the under that modal. Okay, so we need to hide that. Okay, so for that we need to do is target our feedback header. Okay, we did is we're gonna say feedback header dot style dot display to be on none. Okay, and then we're gonna say feedback list, whatever that list, all of our list. Okay, so we need to target this feedback list as well. Did we target our? No. All right, and then we're gonna say feedback list dot style dot display is equal to none as well. So now they both get disappeared. So if we click on this, the modal appears and they both get disappeared. And then when we click on the cancel button, what happens is, like when I click on this cancel, so it again displays like again this thing goes off and that thing feedback header and its content gets off. So we need to do that. And when we when we click on this cancel button, add event listener, when we click on this, and what we need to do is same things but opposite properties. Okay, so we need to display again the modal to none and feedback header to be instead of block it should be flex, because if its property was displayed to be flex, so they would be side by side, right? Then this should be from none to be block. All right, so it should work. So if I click on add feedback, cancel, and this work. You see how cool is that? When we click on this add feedback, we get all of these values, whatever the user enters in this, and get that and store that into local storage, right? So let's add that property. Let's add that feature. Add pattern dot add event listener on click. So when I click on this, first of all I need to grab all of our input field values. So because we already grabbed the input values, name input, title input, and text input, we grab them, and we need to grab only its values. All right, so we can say that before that we can really create a feedback object, let feedback, where we will store their values, whatever the user enters on the in that whatever the user enters in that input fields, we're gonna store that into this object. So like feedback dot name, like whatever the feedback dot name is gonna be whatever the user enters in that field, right? So we're gonna say feedback dot name is equal to name input dot value, whatever the value of that input is. Okay, and same thing, we're gonna copy paste this 2 more times. Wait, this is only value, and this should be title, and this should be title, this should be text, text area import, all right, and we store that into that, and we can really see that, like when we console log, let me do all right. If I open up my console and click on add feedback, and let's add in some values, set nice st, and if I click on that add feedback, you see I get all of these values. What I'm doing is like just storing those properties into object with the keys as feedback name, title, and text, right? So now we can do is like to associate an ID to each feedback, like so they can like be really be different from the other, so they can be like really unique, so each feedback would be unique from the other. All right, so we're gonna say let id is equal to math dot floor math dot random, so it would generate a random number between 0 to 1 and multiply that with 1000, and then we will get the from 100 multiply that with 100, and math.floor would like get rid of the decimal number. Okay, so we will associate that as well to feedback object and give that feedback id is equal to id, and when the user clicks on that add button, we're gonna make the input values, like input fields, actually empty. Okay, so we're gonna say name input dot value is equal to empty, and the title input dot value is equal to empty, and text area input dot value is equal to empty. All right, and then we're gonna do is when we click on that, we made the input fields empty, or grab all of the inputs, and then added that to our feedback object, and then we're gonna display the model to none, like display the model to be like disappear our model. Okay, model dot style dot display to be none, and do what is we're gonna say feedback header dot style dot display to be flex, and feedback list dot style dot display to be block. All right, and let's test this feature that we just added. Is like when we click on that, and when we click on this, and it disappears, right? But it's not doing anything apart from that. You see the input fields disappeared. We click on this, and the input fields disappeared, and the model also disappeared. Okay, and now we need to actually store this new generated object into local storage, right? So we're gonna say local storage dot set item. So this is how you set the item into the local storage. So we're gonna set id as a key and rest of its properties as its values. So we're gonna say json.stringify. Whenever you are storing the values, you use json.stringify, and when you are getting the values, you use what? json.parse method. Okay, json.stringify whatever the feedback object is. Okay, and that should do our stuff. And then we're gonna say window dot location dot reload, so it will reload our page as well. And let's test this feature, and it should store our whatever our new value into our local storage. You see, and when I click on this, local storage is empty for now. And now when I do is add the value Zaid nice app, when I click on this add feedback, you notice what happens is when I click on this local storage, you see there is one like a random key that is generated math not random, like it generated a random number between 0 to 100 and assigned it as an id, because we specified over here that this id would be as a key, and it's as key, and the rest of our properties are stored in an object, like name is Zaid and title is whatever it is and text is this, you see, and id is this. So that is perfect. We did the like great thing. Now we need to show this into our home screen as well, right? To do this, we're gonna make a new function called show feedback. We're gonna call that function over here show feedback. Function show feedback. This function would do what is like get all of the feedbacks from the local storage and show it to our home page, right? So what we will do is let feedbacks is equal to local storage. So if I like console log this, you would see whatever is stored in our local storage, that would be inside of our feedbacks variable. You see, all of our things are now, and its length is showing over here. So we can really now play around with this local storage thing. Okay, so because its length might be greater than 1, so we can really do is like let I is equal to 0 and I is less than whatever that feedback's length is, like, or whatever the length of local storage is, I plus plus. And what we'll do is, like, first of all, getting the feedback object from local storage, and let feedback is equal to, I already told you, when you are getting the whenever you are getting the object or like key value pairs from the local storage, you use what method? json.parse. Okay, so instead of that, we are now going to use is json.parse, and going to use local storage dot get item, and we're going to pass in feedbacks dot key, whatever the key of that feedback is, into I. So if I like really show you what I mean by that, before that is, like, if I console log this, feedbacks dot key, whatever their key, into I. Okay, so that means, like, at 0 position what key is, like at first position what key is, it would give you those keys. And if I, like, we only have one key, let's add in two more things, like let's add in, so we can really see more keys. Now there is one more property, and you can see that local storage, one is 15 and one is 77, and now we can see that 77 and 15 are shown. And now that is what we are doing, is like getting the whatever the key values are in the local storage, we are accessing them with the keys and storing them into initial into our feedback variable. And then if we console log this feedback, you should see each of the feedback. Let's run this, and you would see that we got each of the feedback and all of its associate properties in an object, right? And now that we got all of his properties, we can show that to our home screen. So because we know, like, we already made our feedback details, like, right? And so we're gonna, like, make this stuff, like, copy. We can, like, copy this and append it to feedback list, because we already target this feedback list, right? So we can say over here feedback list dot inner HTML with the template literals plus equals, so we are appending to that inner template literals, and we will paste that, right? So that means, like, it would add in for each of the feedback, it would add in these this HTML, it would add in this HTML for all of the feedbacks, right? So if I, like, do this, you will see that it is printing out the same thing that I copied from the HTML, but we need to, like, display whatever the new feedbacks is, right? So for that, we're gonna replace wherever this is with our feedback that is stored, feedback name that is stored in our local storage. So to that, we're gonna say feedback, this feedback, right? This one, this feedback, whatever its feedback name is, and now you would notice the name is changed, but the title and content is same. But you notice, like, that is, like, how it works, like how you are appending the same thing for every feedback and changing the just name and the title thing for other feedbacks. And we can do over here is this is gonna be, because we already we accessed our properties from let me remove this. We accessed our properties into from local storage, and now we can say feedback dot title would give us the title of that object, and then this would be feedback dot text, right? So now our text and title is also coming from local storage. All right, and so that is like we have done the create part and we have done the read part of create read. The only two things left is like delete and update. So for that we need to create another function that is going to be delete feedback with an ID, whatever the ID of that because we're gonna delete the feedback with whatever its ID is. Like if we do what is like where is our local storage? So if we do is local storage dot remove 77. If we do this, right, so it's going to delete all of its properties. Like let me show you. If I run this local storage dot remove item like 77, like 77, okay, if I, you see 77 is gone. So that is what we have to do, like grab the whatever ID, grab the ID of whatever the item we want to remove and pass that to this function and do this thing, right? And if I like refresh this, it should be gone. You see, it's gone. And now we can do to grab its ID, whatever we want to delete is we're gonna do over here is actually call this function over here, and on click is equal to delete feedback, call this delete feedback, and pass in whatever whatever the feedback ID of that is, right? Feedback dot ID. So console log ID, and if I like console log and click on this delete thing, you will notice I will get its ID. You see, I got its ID. Now I just need to do is like remove this 15 from the local storage. If I get this ID, and I'm gonna comment this out, I'm gonna do is local storage dot remove item, whatever that ID is, and then we're gonna refresh the page, window dot location dot reload. All right, and it should remove that object. Okay, so let's test it. Click on delete, and that's gone. Page reloads and it's gone. So let's add in two more two again, so we can really see all right, and we can do the same stuff for our added as well, but we need to make a new function for added feedback, right? Just add it, and All right, so that is gonna be our final function. So same thing, we get its id and we can change the stuff. When we click on add it, we get its id. We get its id. Okay. And so first of all we need to do is grab the feedback, same thing like we did in the add. It's gonna work like similar to like combination of add and delete. First of all we need to grab the json.parse local storage dot get item, get the whatever that is from the local storage, and then we're gonna do is model dot style. We're gonna, when we add it, like when we click on the add it, a model should appear so we can edit its values, right? So we're gonna say block and feedback header. All right, and if I click on that, click on add it, you see a pop-up model header pops up. So in the pop-up we need to put in the values of whatever we are editing. Okay, so we need to do is name input dot value is equal to whatever we grabbed from the local storage, we're gonna put its name. Okay, feedback dot name. Okay, and in the title feedback dot title, and in the text area we want to put in feedback dot text. Okay, so let's go over here, click on edit. You see all of the values gets in the model automatically, right? But when we like click on this add feedback, instead of like adding a new one which we do not want, we need to like update this one only, right? So we need to do is now, then we like when we click on the add button, we need to do is on click, it should do what, add in a function. I'm adding an arrow function, right? What happened? All right, there's a space which shouldn't be, and we need to do is feedback dot id is equal to whatever the id. Okay, and the feedback dot title is equal to, actually let me copy the code from add feedback. All right, and then we need to put this into our local storage with our id. Local storage dot set item into id with the json dot stringify and feedback, and then we need to again make the model disappear. and then we're gonna reload the page at the end. Hopefully that works. Let's try to, like, if you refresh this, let's try to make this p a small p. Okay, let's see. Nice app, and click on add, and it's added. But the thing is, we got this one. To get rid of the old feedback, we can do is call our delete back function and pass the id to that. Okay, and it should do now. Let's delete these, and let's delete this. Add in a new feedback, that nice app. All right, so let's try to edit it, and we're gonna say that Ahmad, nice app, title updated. Okay, and we're gonna see that it is working fine, and we can added those and delete those, and let's try to delete this one. And because this one is like hard coded, and we can remove that from our HTML, so it is not shown. Let's do is cut all of the code from here till here, because we want to show only those items that are in local storage. Okay, let's add in one more. Beautiful. All right, beautiful. So I'm gonna like end this tutorial over here. That is like we can add in like more functionality to it, like instead of like deleting the old id, we can like keep the old id and make uh, and instead of deleting the old id, we can like keep the same id. For that, like, we need another function, and the code would like become a little longer, but I want to like keep it small, so I'm gonna stick to that. So yeah, but that was the point, like how the local storage CRUD operations work, and how local storage is really helpful in like storing some small data, which is like up to 10 mbps. Hopefully you enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, hit the video a thumbs up, and subscribe this video in your if you want more helpful videos in your web development journey, and I will see you next time.